Hello, and welcome everybody to another episode of Strick and Roll. I'm your host, Shwin, in this episode 45. I'm joined on a glorious Wednesday morning here, but I'm joined by John Jablonka. He is a content creator that tweets a lot about the Miami Heat. He is also joining us from the UK. John, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, it's you're behind enemy lines here, so we'll have to see how it goes. You have to really tread carefully here. But before we get started, I do have to make a few announcements. The first being that the Strickland has an Instagram. Check that out. That is at the strick.land. Posting all kinds of new content on there. The Strickland also has a YouTube channel. If you're watching this podcast on there, please hit like and subscribe to the channel. That'd be a huge help to us. The Strickland also has a Patreon, which you can subscribe to. There are a number of different tiers. There's a $6 tier that gets you access to Pod Strickland. This podcast that I host every Friday with Prez, you also get access to the Strickland Mailbag, hosted by Andrew Steele, a.k.a. Doug, a.k.a. the Doug Bag, alongside Dallas Miko. That comes out every week. You also get access to the Strickland Discord, where the conversation never stops. There are further tiers. There's a $9 tier that gets you access to Strickland Roll, this solo podcast right here, where I rant and rave about the Knicks even more. You also get access to wonderful premium articles by Matthew Miranda. And now you also get access to Strictly NFL, hosted by Constantine and Jeffrey Rasmussen, where they dive into Jets, Giants, and broad NFL topics. There are further tiers. There's a $15 tier, $30 tier, $50 tier, and $100 tier. Those with a variety of additional benefits like listening on pod recordings and merchandise discounts, and even potentially co-hosting a podcast alongside yours truly one day, whether you choose to subscribe or not. None of this would be possible without you. And none of this would be possible without BetOnline, which is your number one source for all your betting needs. Get the latest odds, lines, and match reports for baseball, boxing, golf, and more. BetOnline continues to be the fastest and easiest way to place your wagers, including live betting and your favorite casino and card games available to play right from your phone. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and get in on the action. Remember to use promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, so John, you are a Heat fan, I take it, and I guess look, they obviously make the most annoying possible finals run ever, for me anyway. For you, obviously, much less annoying. But I guess so. First, my question would be: did you feel like, look, the season ends however it ends? You get smacked in the first playoff game by the Hawks. Then you have this kind of inspired comeback in the second playing game against Chicago. Did you have any confidence that that Miami Heat team, the 2022-2023 Heat team, had a finals run in them? Did they had that level in them, or were you as taken aback by the kind of sudden rise, that amorphosis of the team, I guess you could say, as everybody else was?
I was surprised by the fact that they managed to flip the switch, but at the same time, I have receipts for this because I also was talking about this on Twitter. My whole ceiling for the Heat was Jimmy has to be Jordan. He has to be the kind of player we saw him last year when he just carried the Heat with no offensive help, and everyone else needs to shoot from like 45% from free, and that's exactly what happened. Jimmy had one of the greatest series against the Bucks, plus the 45% from free didn't also helped. The Knicks, that was a good bracket. They didn't have to face someone else. I thought they were just matched up well with them. And then the same thing happened with the Celtics. Everyone else stepped up and shot free. But throughout the year, I didn't think the Heat were that elite of a team where they had so much room for error. The only room for error was Jimmy had to play great and everyone else had to shoot well. That was the only way they could actually win.
Yeah, that was for sure the case. And then, I mean, the thing that was weird though is, so like, I think the Heat the year before, what were they, second or third in 3-point percentage? They were a good shooting team though.
Yeah, they were the best team.
Yeah, and then this past year, I think they were like 29th or something. They were really bad throughout the regular season, and it's odd because I mean, the Heat always have like 7 billion injuries that they're dealing with throughout the season. But like the personnel in most part was very similar. I think the only major loss, right, was PJ Tucker, who like, sure, he shoots a nice percentage. He also takes like 2.5 threes per game. You know, it doesn't really move the needle that much. Do you think that was just like variance, or was there something going on that kind of saw such a huge swing from year to year?
I think it was more variance, but not to that extent. I don't think they're either the best team or the worst team in basketball. I think they're just somewhere in the middle. Last year was probably an anomaly for most, for like Strus. I don't think he's a 45% shooter. I don't think Gabe was that kind of shooter as well. But I also don't think they're bottom of the league either. Hero, Kyle, and Duncan Robinson, they're the elite shooters. They had a down year. Duncan almost didn't play most of the season, so I think that played a part in their stating. But then in the playoffs, they just went back to their usual optimistic kind of stuff, like side of the 3-point percentage.
Yeah. And so my question then is this, and like this is something that I don't really have like, I think you can think about it different ways. I don't think any viewpoint is necessarily wrong. So you make this finals run. We can talk about like, the various individual series at some point too. But okay, they go to the finals. I think they were pretty handily beaten by the Nuggets, which is fine. The Nuggets pretty much handily defeated everybody. And I guess my question is like, do you feel like this finals run in certain ways? Actually, I think internally it seems like the team has taken a very, we're not going to get carried away trying to keep all these pieces viewpoint. And I'm sure some of that is influenced by like, sure, they want to trade for Dame. But do you feel like there are fans now that are just like they're almost, it sounds so crazy to say this, but like taking too much from this finals run versus kind of the struggles that you endured over the full 82 game regular season? Or is it kind of the other way where you think, no, the playoffs were the actual true reflection of this team, and we should value a lot of the players higher than maybe generally is kind of the consensus view?
I lean more towards they need more changes. I don't think this was I think that the way they went to the finals is part of the biggest issue they keep having since 2020, where they don't have a reliable second option on offense. They don't have that Goran Dragic that played in the bubble, where he was pretty good. The only reason they are able to get to the finals this year is because of the 3-point shooting. And I don't think relying on a 3-point variance is a good way to build your team around. It's literally Jimmy be Jimmy, Bam play best defense, and then please shoot 45%. Like they could do the same thing with the team, but that's just asking for a lot of luck. And I don't think like even with the final run, they have the same exact weaknesses as they had a whole year round the offense. They couldn't like beat once Jimmy went to the bench, the offense just fell off. That happened in the finals as well. Obviously injuries played a part because the Heat played without Hero, and even though I don't think he's that level of a creator, that's still missing a really good guy. Like even if his 20 points per game is not efficient, that's still missing that kind of player. So I think it's kind of in the middle going forward. But I don't think they can run it back and just say, we've made a final run, let's just do it again. But I also don't think they need that many changes to get over the hump.
So I mean, like you just said, you say that you don't think they need that many changes. Well, it's interesting because it feels like, I mean, look, they've whatever you want to say about them, and I think they're both pretty solid players. Maybe not starters on every single team, but like they were definitely worthy of being starters in the Heat. But the Heat, obviously, they lose Max Strus in free agency to the Cavs, and then they lose Gabe Vincent to the Lakers. Like I don't think it's so weird where it's like, I don't think losing either of these players is crippling, especially given Miami's track record of just like devil conjuring rotation players out of nowhere. But like these guys they started a lot of playoff games over the last couple of years for Miami. Their experience, and I think they showed that if nothing else, like neither of those guys is ever awed by the moment. I think they're very capable of playing in big spots, and I guess like my question is, let's forget the Dame piece of it. Let's just say the Dame trade doesn't happen. So this is the roster going into the season. Like I think like there's two parts of this where it's like Miami rightfully gets a lot of credit for finding talent, developing talent in places that other teams just haven't or are not capable of or never do. And I think a lot of that is down to Spoelstra, who I think is just, I think he's by far the best coach in the league. And so like, I think they rightfully get credit for that. I also think it's like a little bit dangerous to just assume they can replace those guys, because like we've also seen in the past when they've lost some pieces or they've like they're not always like, I know this run since they got Jimmy has been really, really successful. They have 2 finals appearances and a conference finals appearance as well, where they easily could have won that series. And then they lose in the first round one year to the champion Miami Bucks that year. Like, I think there's a danger of assuming that, well, we can just replace Strus, we can just replace Vincent. And I'm not sure. I think a lot of the reason for Miami letting those guys walk is about finances, and not stretching your cap too much, which is a mistake they made when they brought everybody back after that weird 41-41 season they had. So do you think, like, let's just say this is a team going into the season, would you say that you're less optimistic about their ability to be a competitive team in the East, or do you feel like, as good as Strus and Vincent were for the Heat at times, especially over the last 2 years in the playoffs, that you just trust them, or you feel like maybe there's guys in the roster right now that you feel like, yeah, no, this guy will step up and fill that slot?
I would say I feel more about that they can replace them. I think Josh Richardson was a great pickup, and I think he would do much better than what Strus did. But even so, even though I think they could replace them, I still think that they're in the same position as they were in last year. I think the ceiling remains the same. The weaknesses are still the same thing, and I think the defense would be a bit worse though. Kevin Love's a year older, Kyle Lowry's a year older. So I think they would figure out on offense, just trust Jimmy, trust the shooting. It would just be the defense that I can't. That will be a bit of more question mark.
Yeah, the defense. And I think with Lowry too. Like, we even saw last year he was really good in the playoffs, but he basically did nothing for most of the regular season. And some of that's injury, and like I know he was injured and he's managing stuff. He's older. What is he, 38 now? So you're trying to be careful with him and save him, I think, for those bigger moments. But like if he's not available for as much as you'd want him to be, obviously that's a struggle through the 82 games. And then Kevin Love, he's never been a particularly great defender, but yeah, he's older now, so it's just going to be more glaring.
And like they were quite a negative with the net rating with Kevin Love in the playoffs. The only series they did well is against the New York team, where they had to size up. The shooting was gone for both teams, so they could just afford to have him bang bodies with Mitch Robinson and Hartenstein. But against the Celtics and against the Bucks, they did so much better with Caleb. And I also don't know how much we've seen how much that hurt them as well in the Denver series, where Caleb's size didn't really do much against Gordon. So I don't think Caleb is a starting level 4, but he's better than Love, what Love can provide. But that's the change I think they need to address more.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where I think there's a difference between like downsizing for a matchup in the playoffs versus Caleb Martin is our 4. You know what I mean? I think there's always a difference that, and actually, like the Knicks are going to be testing something out like that this year because they effectively replaced Obi Toppin in the rotation with Dante DiVincenzo. So you're looking at, your backup four effectively being some combination of Josh Hart and RJ Barrett. So we'll see how that goes. Obviously, that's a little bit different than like what you're dealing with because, you know, Julius Randle is obviously just a better player than Kevin Love at this point in time. And so, like, and he's going to play, 35 minutes a night. So you're talking about 13 minutes a game, whereas it's more variable, right? For Miami, where like Love, I know the four spot over the last couple of years has been a kind of like a position where I think I've seen a lot of Miami fans talk about getting overpowered on the glass, especially during the regular season. And that's just been a weak spot. And I mean, I don't watch them enough to have any strong thoughts about it, but
the defensive stuff about the boards, that's completely. People just look at the Heat being a bottom rebounding team, but they're like the top 3, top 5 defensive rebounding percentage team in each of the seasons, even in the playoffs. I think they even out rebounded the Bucks. So I think the defensive rebounding is non-existent. I think that's an issue. They also the whole 4 and Bam. That's the big topic as well. Where they, as a huge fan of the Heat, where they want to put Bam at a 4 and have a normal traditional 5 with him to solve the defensive rebounding issues.
Yeah, I gotta say, like, I think, look, as a Knicks fan, I really, really do not like Bam. Like, I just think the stuff he gets away with in terms of screening has been ridiculous forever. Him and like, he's like in that group of elite get away with moving screens guys. It's like him and, like Draymond and Al Horford and like there's a few other guys. But like, I mean, watching them in this playoffs, especially this year, I would not want him to play a different position. I think he is like really good as your defensive anchor, and I think he gives you options that very few other centers give you defensively. And like offensively, sure, I think you see every year in the playoffs his usage drops a little bit. I think that speaks to some of his limitations as a shot creator, but like he's still going to give you the dribble handoff options. He's still going to be a pretty decent facilitator. We've seen them go like, bring the ball up and just spread the floor and let him go to work. And like, he's made that happen a few times. So like, I think he's just really, really good. And it would you're better off looking for a better 4 than moving Bam to the 4. Yeah. Like that just doesn't make any sense to me at all.
That's how I feel. I think people just mistaken they think it's either Caleb, like a Caleb kind of 4, or a Brook Lopez kind of 5, and put Bam at a 4. But I think having a Dorian Finney-Smith or a PJ Tucker that could shoot from above the break, that's the kind of 4 you'd probably need. Like I always said, like PJ Tucker was the ideal player you want on defense in a Heat system. The only issue was he couldn't do anything on offense beyond corner threes. Right. So if you had I think Al Horford would be a perfect player next to Bam, a guy that could shoot from everywhere on a free switch, also be a playmaking hub. I think those are the kind of 4s you want to have alongside Bam, and to keep him as a 5, because we've seen that's exactly what he did against the Knicks, where he just switched from Brunson late in their game 6, and that took out the whole the offense for the Knicks in the 4th. And then you wanted to have him on Robinson, he would do that as well.
Yeah, that definitely helped. It also helped that we decided to play the worst possible lineup we could throughout that 4th quarter, which was really, really fun. I was very excited.
Switching out Grimes.
It was really, really nice to watch Thibs play RJ and Josh Hart together, despite any and all evidence that doesn't work. Good job. I'm sure Eric Spoelstra was very happy about that. No, but to go back to this, like, so you've got this thing at the 4 where, like, I think, like, yeah, I don't know the defensive rebounding thing. Even if that was an issue, I just feel like their defense generally has been really good over the last couple of years, and basically for as long as Spoelstra's been there. So even if they were a bad defensive rebounding team, which they're not, I would assume that it's because they're making up for it somewhere else, be it generating turnovers or whatever it is exactly. But like, I think the 4 itself, there are some issues there, but we have not. I mean, we should just talk about it. Like, they've obviously been connected all summer to Damian Lillard. Damian Lillard very famously he handed the Portland Trail Blazers a 1-team trade request list. with Miami on it. Forgetting like but we can get into the cost and all that stuff later. But Damian Lillard to me is like, if you could, aside from Steph Curry, if you could pick one player that would just make perfect sense with like Jimmy and Bam, it would be Dame. And I don't really know. I don't know what it would take. I think it'll literally take whatever Miami can offer to put in the trade, and Portland at some point just being like, "Fine, fuck it, let's just do it." But even if it is everything, I think like if you're Miami, you kind of need to do it because Jimmy's what? He's 33. Is that right?
I think 33 or 34.
Yeah, something. He's on the older end, and as good as he's been in the playoffs, we also know that he plays hard. He's played hard throughout his career. He's been banged up a lot, and he is banged up a lot, and so like it's cool to be like, oh, like Jimmy Jordan, he's gonna raise his level in the playoffs and like all this stuff, but we don't know if that's always going to be there. And he's also like at an age where if it goes, it can go like that. And so I think you almost need to take the shot because if you don't, like, what is your other avenue? Well, I don't know. Like, they're in such a weird situation too with their picks, and we know they're never going to tank. So it's like, this is what you're kind of, you need to be able to pull the trigger on. And so I wonder, like, I guess just first, in terms of pure fit, like, is Dame just a guy that you're like, yeah, you just go get this dude. Fucking, this is perfect.
Yeah, I don't think there's a cost that, unless Bam's in, like, outside of Bam, everything's on the and Jimmy, everything's on the table, and I'm fine with that cost. Because I don't think there's a better fit than Dame. Even like considering any available players, you'd need a deep 3-point threat. That's obviously Dame and Curry. You'd want someone that can get to the rim. That's also Dame. Good playmaker with Bam. I don't think Dame ever had like a big like Bam. The only big I can think of is Nurkic.
Yeah, and Nurkic is like, come on, it's like not the same thing.
And LaMarcus Aldridge. So that's also not a type Bam type of big. And then with Jimmy as well. Jimmy doesn't have to be on the ball. He's shown like when Goran was still healthy, he dropped his on-ball usage down significantly compared to this year's. And he just each year Jimmy's getting more efficient. You were saying? Oh, you wanted to say?
No, sorry, I just you cut out for a second, so I thought
So yeah, and then with Jimmy and Dame, Jimmy does most of his work from like easy points, whether it's cuts, that kind of. He like last year was one of the like better role players as well. You're giving Dame someone who he'd never had someone like an offensive talent like this. He'll get way more easy points, be even more probably be more efficient, and that's just less of a load on Jimmy. You don't really want Jimmy to be having that kind of usage to have to be Jordan to win games. You don't want that from any player.
Yeah, and I think they're like, look, like Michael Jordan was Michael Jordan. It's not something that you should just expect anybody to be able to do. As far as the cost, like, I think I've seen you and I've seen a few other people kind of like laugh at the idea, not like laugh, but like kind of make fun of the idea of like anybody being off the table for Dame as far as Miami is concerned. So like, I think Miami can do what? They can trade. Is it 3 firsts or 2 firsts? It like depends on kind of like timing or something, right?
I think it depends on like the protection with OKC, whether like if they'll have to involve OKC or something, get their picks. I think they could offer. I think Zach Lowe, they say either 3 or 4 picks that they could offer most.
Yeah, I think they'd have to get OKC to like lift the protection on the pick that they owe them, and then they can unlock a 3rd pick. So it's like, you can do 3 picks and Hero and all this stuff. Like, I think Hero is the one that's weird to a lot of people because, like, he has had obviously multiple good seasons. After the bubble, I think he's struggled in the playoffs. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Yeah,
The 2021 was a struggle for everyone. 2023 he missed, but yeah, 2022 he struggled a lot against Atlanta and then
yeah.
Philadelphia. Then got injured for the Celtics one.
Right. And so I guess like the question is like for you, do you think Hero is like does he have some potential to be a star or do you think like hey, like he's a good player, he's a sixth man of the year player, like he's a guy who's going to help you get buckets. But ultimately like I guess like what do you see his value as because obviously when you see like like when you see how people react to his name in trades and I'll be completely honest I like I think he's a good player, but it's also like when I see Heat fans acting like, "Well, no, we're giving you Tyler Hero, like that's a great piece to get for Dame," and I'm like, let's calm down, like especially like a team that has they have Scoot, they have Simons, they have Sharp. It's like, what are they doing with Tyler Hero right now? Um, I guess just like more or less, where do you fall on Hero because he's like definitely one of the more divisive players around the league in terms of like there are people that really like the shot creation and all the like the pull up shooting and all that stuff that he gives you. But then there are other people that are like, well, look, like he's not really getting to the rim. He's not quite a primary ball handler, and he's is a defensive weakness. Like, where do you just kind of fall on what he is, and do you think he's a guy that what he is isn't necessarily what he's going to be in a few years, and maybe people are selling his upside short?
I'm not exactly sure on the potential. I don't think I'm good at evaluating like what's needed. Um, like you said, his issue getting to the rim. That's the main issue. But I don't know if that's something you just can easily train, or if that's just his athleticism not allowing him to do that. So I don't know what the potential is. Like if we're just talking right now or like next year, I think he's a really good. Depending on what team he is on. Like if he's on a good team that wants to contend, I think his best option is a third level guy. He would need like if we had a Goran Dragic on this team, he would be perfect for them. He will be a secondary ball handler. He's a elite 3-point shooter. I think I've tweeted that a couple of times where over like the last few years, it's only him, Curry, Clay, I think some other names that have like better grades, all 3-point shooting. So he's an elite 3-point shooter. He's a great off-ball guy. Plus, he does give you that additional ball handling if needed in small bursts. So that's where he can help like contending teams. But if he's on it, Portland, I also think that's good. I think he made good leaps as a passer over the years. Um, I don't know, like his scoring in isolation or getting to the rim will affect his ceiling, but that's still good, like an option to have on your team, especially if you have Scoot that can get to the rim. Um, then he could switch, like he could play off, or he could be the knockdown shooter that Scoot would need. But he's also capable of just handling the ball. And for a team like Portland or any other like tanking team, your job is not to win. So that will be good enough reps to get him, um, which I think can get better. Like his PNR usage has been increasing each year, and I think there's been improvements significantly. There's still some shot selection issues. This year he had like the best month of his career in January, where he one of the most efficient seasons, had one of the most high like scoring season months as well. But then he just reverted back to long mid-range pull-ups. He just, I think most of that was injuries as well. So overall, like going forward, I think he's just he's a good player if you want, if you're a young team, because he has the potential. That's he has a good potential to be a good second, third option. So if you have like a talent like Scoot to be the number one, then I don't see why you wouldn't want to have that guy.